name is Ryszard, and I'm dealing with no-code. Some time ago, I dealt a lot with design, and I started with web design, to be honest. I went through product design, then no-code came in. No-code came out of my need for some projects where I needed to implement something on my own. So I started with Elementor in WordPress. Then I was moving on, looking for new solutions. But shortly about what Webflow is and how I got there. With Elementor, the problem was that knowledge about coding and doing something more customized was really needed. HTML and CSS had to be used from the very beginning. But I was also looking for solutions, trying to go through various web pages, millions of bookmarks, and I was nervous because I couldn't do what I want. Some snippets not working, I couldn't wrap my head around it, and on my bookmark there popped up Webflow, and I was really interested in it, and I started working with the subject. Going back to what no-code is, it is implementation of web pages and applications by means of visual interface instead of clicking the lines of code. Looking at history, we might say that Excel was the first no-code tool where you could click something for yourself. Later, for example, in Dreamweaver, there was a visual editor, and you could play by no-code. The first actually no-code solution was Adobe Muse. It's not supported anymore, but it was the starting point for what Webflow did later. So Webflow started its Webflow era around 2013-14. A few years later, the technology has been developing really strongly. Lattice has the web page based on Webflow, and it's a huge institution serving over 4,500 companies worldwide. Another application made in Bubble, Good Gigs app. So it's an app to find a job with a mission, and for now they've got around 4,000 users. Cut My Garden, done a little bit differently, exported from Figma. It's the Bravo Studio tool that helps you to do something in Figma, add the database, export the prototype, and application is ready. You can download it. That's how they built the app for booking and care for gardens. It's not only web apps, not only mobile apps, not only web pages, but also all kind of internal tools. DoorDash used RedTool to build their tools, and they saved millions. They built 40 plus tools, and they saved like 50 times the time. The number of tools appearing is huge. It started with a few, now it's several hundreds, maybe thousands of tools. All the time something new is popping up. Everybody is looking for a way to learn a new tool. And usually we just start the tool, open an app, and click through it, trying to learn it. And here is the question. Are we no-code developers if we are using no-code apps? I'd like to show you what it looked like in Tonik. When I got crazy about no-code, the first step was to discover that maybe we can use no-code to make web pages for our clients in Tonik. I started talking to our developer, and it really caught on. Then we made a presentation for our tool, for our team. It was a product design, our design team. People were delighted by how the tool works easily and is fast to achieve and implement everything you have designed. Tonik got crazy about it, so we had to sell the first project. And here, it didn't go so well. It was not as easy as we thought. It was really time-consuming. We made a lot of calls to clients to convince them to use the technology, a ton of mails. And the first project was sold after 2 months, from the moment we decided to sell it and started working towards it. So we thought, like, well, in IT it's not easy to enter new technology and sell something new. It's really effort-consuming. But we did have this first project. It wasn't a simple page, a complex one, for a very demanding client, whom we did convince not to choose Wix, but Webflow. And we were kind of dragging with that, because we could hear all the time that Wix would be better after all. So, in the beginning I was both a designer and NoCode developer for the project, but quite soon I realized it wasn't possible. So, we added a designer on the team because of the timeline. We were not able to implement designs fast enough, because as designer and developer at the same time, I'd have to choose either I design or implement, but I cannot do both things at the same time. Implementation without design wouldn't work here. So that's how we took this road. Shana came in and we implemented whatever was designed. So we delivered the first project, it happened, but we decided this YOLO is not that easy as an approach, not the best of approaches. So maybe we need a structure after all. So I went back to the beginning, to bookmarks, to starting different pages, reading about things I knew something about but not good enough. And I was looking for the first methodology, how to build the structure for this work. First of all, it was names and terminology. Second, to avoid the chaos in the project you neglect. So a no-code developer was going to implement and not deal with design, because you cannot do everything. In some places it could be on freelance, done on freelance, don't really work for agency. So we're flooded with leads, with projects. And very soon we started looking for people that could help us out. And here comes Wojtek, who was the first no-code freelancer. He wasn't really looking a full-time job, he wanted to stay freelance, and we were not sure whether the leads is the hype because a new technology was going in, or are they going to stay. Normally we don't function this way, we don't hire but the freelancers to help us. So starting work on more projects with Wojtek, we noticed that our loose settlements and our loose deals wouldn't suffice. So after a year, working was great, but it turned out that every project was a little bit different, the structure was different, and we came to the conclusion that if we want to develop, we must have even more structured manner of work. First of all, we never had the universal start to the project and universal framework. We didn't have classes, we didn't have structure to multiply elements in order to help each other in the project. So we know what the structure is. And some ready-made solutions that we could apply to our projects. And then we decided to build a framework. But discovery point again, what is framework after all? What should it be? What do we need? And are we building our own solutions? Or maybe we are using the solutions that were already existing on Webflow and you could use the framework from there. We decided that in the case in Tonik, the number of repetitive elements is not big because they are very individual projects, so we try to do our own thing, our own framework. Also because we wanted to be completely independent in the development of the framework. We didn't want anybody to do it differently and for us to adapt. We are going to manage where it goes. After a while, we had the first framework ready. It was a template, Webflow template, including the possibility of clear start, but also imposed some kind of naming because of the typically used structures and classes. They were already defined. We started thinking about what values it should be based on. So we decided on RAMs instead of pixels, to have fluid layouts and so on. But also we created a style guide with classes that gave styles to text and colors to be applied globally. So you think, well, that's it, why not more? We didn't want this to affect the development of project and what's happening in the project, and devoid it of autonomy of developer. It should be helping us and not imposing us and putting us into frames. So here comes Wojtek again, but here he's NoCode Developer, so not a freelancer anymore. So he joined us in December 2021. More and more leads were coming. It was great working with Wojtek because he realized it was great to work in team and what advantage it is as compared with freelance work. He decided to try full-time job, and we decided, okay, why not, let's go with it. And we opened more recruitment. We didn't wait long. January 2022, we've got David coming in, crazy about no-code, turbo energy, will to work, and searching for new solutions. When we had those two people in the team, now it was a team actually, we had to start developing not only on the subject level, but also how to build a team and how to deal with that. So collaboration is important, especially when you have new people coming in, they don't know each other, so why don't we organize a hackathon and integrate this way? It was a great option. So in 2 days we have created MVP, and Bartek will tell you later in the day about this MVP pickle hackathon. 2 days, a lot of work, but focusing on the team aspect. After 2 days, we have completely come together. We know exactly who likes doing what. We had better private contacts, and we decided that hackathons is a great option to develop and integrate our team. But it's not only about integration, also about learning new technology. For the first time in Tonik, we decided to build a no-code product. And this gave us the possibility and showed us that no-code is not only front-end, it's not only the page, it's logics, it's databases. No-code developer doesn't have to be front-end developer, but maybe something more. You need to be able to deal on many levels, not only on visual level. And also, not everybody likes everything. One person can be better with back-end and the other person with front-end. We noticed that no-code has a great potential for products or building MVP for products, for clients. We built Pickle in 2 days, but you can have a long-term project as well. So in July 2022, so this year, after implementing 45 projects, we had another people joining the team. We've got Agata and Emil as no-code developers. So the team was expanding fast, but the questions about Webflow were flowing in. It's also a challenge as far as team building is concerned. We had to care for integration and work together, have the possibility of collaborating. So with our team full, we wanted to test our work and build experience. What about the team? We need to engage the team, we need to talk to the team, we need to learn, we need to find new paths, accept that somebody has a different opinion and view on a given matter, and everybody in the team should have their voice and input in the team. So I was looking for possibilities for the team to develop and how to do that. We started learning JavaScript as a team, and we approached it because NoCode Developer should use JavaScript. So let's learn it to the level so that everybody in the team knows its structure, edits some simple snippets. We started developing the framework, well, iterated a few times. We created canvas where everybody from the team could drop just a proposal for development, and we are deciding as a team whether we want to do that. Is it very important? Everybody should know how to do that, or everybody deals with that individually? But individually as well. Wojtek started learning how to improve performance of the web page. David started dealing with collecting front-end ideas. That's how we started working. But what is ahead? The team is developing. What's next? So the recruitment is actually open. We are looking for new people to join us, so come over if you want to and you are interested in this. As far as our goals are concerned, we had to we decided that hackathons are going to be just an inherent part of our team in order to integrate it. Our great goal is to enter no-code building, products building. We want to build a commercial MVP using no-code technology. We are looking for bigger and bigger projects. We are starting off with simple or average pages. Now we are doing Webflow. So we want to go ahead and make the projects more interesting, and we never just settle for no-code. We try to match no-code with code, a semi-hybrid system, and to involve developers and no-coders and merge the two technologies, accelerating whatever is possible, but sticking to the type of hygienic of databases and using some solutions that are scalable really far and can be used further in our work. Okay, so this no-code developer. What about this no-code developer? As I said, with WordPress, I had to learn HTML. I had to learn CSS. I had to learn how to research and find solutions. Without knowing the structure of HTML, I wouldn't be able to affect the elements. CSS allowed me to style them, and without it I wouldn't know how classes work. The more you want to do, the more detailed work you have to do, the more you had to learn, and the more HTML and CSS code you needed to know. Then, after a while, there comes JavaScript and logics. You had to copy some snippet of code and paste it and make it work and wonder why it's not working, why isn't it starting. And this also showed me that no-code thinking by developers is very similar to developers thinking. It's very logical. You have to arrive at certain points and look for how things are connected in order to repair a non-working code or add a feature. But logics is not only logical thinking, but building the workflow, how the app or page should work and behave. In interaction with the user, where data is going to be saved, what operations are going to be taken, and so on. If there is logics, you need databases. Without it, it's impossible to save anything. So another aspect on the NoCode developer side, he needs to know about databases. This seems simple, you've got some kind of box, and you drop a few options, a few features, but if you have this kind of technological debt in your database at the very beginning of building your solution, it's going to drag, and it's very difficult to drop it. Even we want to, but then what about data migration, how to do that? So from database, if you want to have a database, you need a database, you need to start building your structure on it. Also, in simple things, databases like CMS, blog, needs database. Here you've got Webflow, who simplified it, and this management is really easy as managing blocks in Excel. It's also possible to do, you need to know what to do and where it comes from. And finally, soft competences, communication within the team. If you're working as freelancer, you've got communication with your client, good work organization, even to look for and improve your workflow, the will to work and search for solutions, but also creativity, first and foremost, creativity. If you want to achieve more and more in no-code, you need to be creative. Because some things you just don't know how to do. Your coding knowledge is not sufficing, so you need to look for it. You need to find a way and create some solutions that are going to help you overcome the technological restrictions. So we've got HTML, CSS, JavaScript. So a no-code developer, is it the right name? So is it no-code? So if you don't have solutions and you need to add some solutions, you can use code. If a client's demands go beyond the possibilities of a tool, aren't you going to add the features or integration of external tools, optimization of work? Knowing code, knowing JavaScript will help you calculate how long it will take to implement a feature. It can be several hours instead of several days. So maybe it's not actually no-code development, it's simply visual development, because you're using graphical interface. But you also need at least knowledge about code, if not code itself. It's very much dependent on how fast and which direction you want to go. If you want to be a freelance developer implementing your own projects, you don't need to use a code at all, but you need to accept that you will not hop over some of the obstacles and restrictions. That's the way it's going to be. If you want to go beyond it, you need to use code. So the question whether it's visual development or no-code development, you answer it for yourself and choose your own path. If you want to work in no-code, yes, you can make a no-code application, but it's faster and easier, often safer, and more independent, is to create something using code, in no-code. Thank you so much. If you have any questions, so just ask them. I'd be glad to answer. Bravo, Ryszard. You have introduced us to the world of no-code. I'm sure there are questions from the room. Thank you for a great presentation. I have a question. What was the most complex implementation that you managed to execute by means of no-code, without some external developer working with you? It's hard to say, it depends on what stage. In the beginning, they were really smaller projects, and every implementation grew. And sometimes we didn't want to know what the developer sent in the snippet, but we did read it, we learned something, and the next time we just knew how to do it on our own. But the first project I talked about, there was a web page where you really need to customize a lot design-wise, drop some shapes to the backgrounds, and there was no help from developers. It was a no-code, completely no-code. Using the code, but at some point, as NoCode developer, I decided for it to work. All you needed, it was Uncle Google and learning how to do that. What knowledge connected with programming it's worth having to implement NoCode? HTML, CSS is the basis. To know how the page behaves and what are the dependencies. In JavaScript, I recommend at least on the level that tells you what it's built like. Not necessarily you have to write the lines of code yourself, but so that you know what's written there. And if there is an error, you can just see it or just to know where to find the mistakes. Thank you for showing us this tool. Because of my work, I work for a corporation. I'm trying to push the idea of this tool in my place of work, but there is the MDA problem. Have you ever had such a problem and how did you overcome it? So what is the MDA problem you mean? If you just pushing the project further? To be honest, we haven't had such a complex subject so far. If there are doubts about data security, for example, sending somebody to Webflow, a documentation was enough. It was mainly Webflow. Once we were building the internal projects, so we were just accepting certain things, but you have to really take care about data security, and if somebody without this knowledge can be protected enough for somebody from the outside not to come and breach the data. Pavel deals with that in our team. He builds dependencies in the database so the user can only use their own and see their own information and not the others. You have mentioned that the team was expanding, and some people, did any of your people have any kind of programming like JavaScript experience beforehand, or were they fresh and they were starting to work as no-code developers? And the second question about backend. Can you set backend by means of no-code? So when you talk about it, and it's more from the front end, I'm able to imagine what about the back end side. So the first question, Wojtek joining us as freelancer, he already knew JavaScript and used it for his own projects. Agata and Emil generally knew what JavaScript is. So we started learning JS in order to structure it to get to the same level so we can move on and collaborate with developers, because they know that we know what we are talking about and we know they know what we are talking about. About backend, if we are building an application, then our MVP, the whole front is what we can see, backend, what is inside. And actually in Bubble, you have to match all the dependencies. You're clicking on this button, the user is, for example, logging in. You have to click it all in. You have to build this all. Filter data, list data in a particular way. This is the backend that you're building. With Webflow, you don't have this backend. It's all done by Webflow. Unless you want to go into attaching external database into Webflow. So you have to have this seemingly backflow, but it depends on the tool and log. It depends on the tool. Many things are dependent on the tool because everybody approaches some different approach to front end and back end. So first you started to learn HTML, CSS. So it was more programmer's approach, and now suddenly you started with the no-code. Why? Not really. The first HTML and CSS started still when I was a freelancer, before I started with Tonik. I was a product designer with Tonik, and for some time I was just working on the products and designing products. The moment I noticed the technology was developing and Webflow started to be more regular, and there was not like Adobe Muse, where you had some kind of monster that is working but is a nightmare. I started talking to developers, they saw the code and realized, well, it's cool. The first tool that it really spits out something that works. So I went deeper into the subject, I implemented some things for my friends, a little bit for fun. And then I realized that maybe in Tonik it would be useful as well. Because even on Twitter you could see that people were searching for solutions and wanted to use or start using the technology. So there were the first projects, and I first combined them with product design. In the beginning there was no code, we were doing projects, testing them. Then there was a choice, I could go deeper into product design or start building no code in Tonik, and I realized, okay, why not no code? It will be something new, less mainstream. I do have great satisfaction with design, but no code, I decided, could be more interesting for me because I've always had this logical and problem solving gist. So sitting for 8 hours or one bug you cannot solve. Sometimes I like it, sometimes I don't. But most often I like it. Don't you feel that as a programmer you have a larger opportunity to solve problems? Surely. If you customize something and you have built documentation, or you have a documentation of you have made, it's easier to find certain things than find it in the ticket of data created by external company. You have to accept certain limitations. No code is an art of acceptance. Not everything can be done, or keep looking for solutions, but sometimes accept. It's undoable. You cannot do everything in no code. Let's move on to our other people who wanted to ask questions. Hello, Regu. How was the after party yesterday? We talked about product designer perspective. You were developing in no-code and started learning JavaScript and so on. Can you see any advantages of no-code for people who already know HTML, CSS, JavaScript and so on, and already build, they are developers, and think about starting with no-code because it's a hype now? But doesn't make sense to enter this technology if you are a developer already and you have been building those solutions but not in no-code. I think in some aspects, yes. It depends on what exactly you do and what your domain is and what you're working on. But quite often you can make your life easier by no-code and accelerate it. It very much depends on your individual approach, but the knowledge, programmer's knowledge, gives you turbo possibilities for the no-code, because you're independent, you can just write things you're missing. So the more you know, the more you can do. That's what it looks like. The more programmer's knowledge, the further you can go with no-code. The question is why. If you're an agile programmer, it's not so much economizing on your time. You will just pop it in faster as a code. What is the advantage? If we can speak of advantage, maybe a context. What is the advantage of having a no-code developer in your team rather than a JavaScript developer? Where our developers team is very divided from no-code team. Two different things. It's a completely separate development. So it's hard to say how it would function if we combine the team. If we are building this kind of combination, no-code developer would be strictly in developing team. It would function differently than it functions in Tonik. We have no-code developers who implement web pages. We don't use custom codes anymore for implementation of pages. Everything is on no-code. And the developers team got different tasks, so it's hard for me to answer this question because it's not my experience. How to build a team of different developers and no-code developers. What I meant was, you've got developers team, this agile, meaning, so you've got developers, designers, product owner, product manager. There are different teams. In such a team, what would be the adventure of having a no-code developer versus JavaScript developer? It's not ironic, I'm just wondering. Because it's something new, I can see great value in the context of discovery and fast prototyping, more touchable than tangible than Figma would be. And what about the implementation process? How does it translate? As you said, prototypes, for example, this is a useful and fast thing, and that's a great advantage because a no-code developer can just click it very fastly. So I have used Webflow for prototyping in products. If I had to show something quickly, switch on, switch off scrolls, or even uploaded screenshots of elements into Webflow, and I just settled them and presented how it works. So this is a great advantage that the no-code developer has. So he's able to do the front, and if we've got a separate JavaScript developer, he's going to deal with the front, but not necessarily so detailed way and so fast as no-code developer. Speaking of tests, anything that needs to create more things in shorter time, it could be easier to do with no-code developer because he just clicks it in and uses some ready-made or partial things, doesn't start from the scratch every time. The difference is developers often have the approach that everything has to be really precise, elegant, well done. If there's any chance that anything wouldn't work in a situation that will happen 1 in 10 billion times, they have to do it differently. No-code developer, in my experience, it's easier to deal, and he will faster or she will faster accept that something might not work under certain conditions, but we are accepting this because that's the technology we decided upon, and once in a billion times, it's going to fail somewhere with some resolution, for example. So it's more flexible. That's how I see it. But it's my private experience. I don't want to offend any developers here, but yes, in my experience, that's what it looks like. Congratulations for your presentation, it's really great. For you, for Tonik, for open-mindedness, for going on with this experiment, and it is pays off. Observation about design ways that UX, UI, and so on, specialization, and now you're encouraging us to combine the skills. Webflow, I have used it a little bit, and how commercially you're dealing with supporting the projects and developing them further. How do you do documentation, returning to your project after 3-6 months, design of PC system? How do you maintain and develop projects? The possibility of maintaining a project was given by a framework, because no matter who came up with a given solution, it's known to everybody, so everybody can enter the project and work on it and develop it. Documentation, in the case of simple or medium complex pages, it's based on educating your client about how they should work and operate, and serving as assistance if they don't know something. It's a little bit individual with every client. We are adjusting and adapting to what they need, what they expect, and how they want it done. And for scaling and development, I haven't noticed any problems. The only problem is when the situation is with a non-educated user and he dug into the project and suddenly you don't know what really happened. So we transfer project to the client, and after, if the project is further developed, we work in their workspace space, and we are invited there. We don't maintain projects and don't store projects on our accounts. Users do that. The minus will be that a client sometimes have control over things they shouldn't really have because they are not skilled enough. So we do backups, Webflow backs up, so we can return in some dramatic circumstances, we can return and see what happened before and go to the previous version. Have I answered your question? If there is any more questions, he will ask you after. So we are running out of time. So our US designers and researchers are sought after in the UX branch. Should it be left to NoCode developers? So UX designers working in NoCode. A good advantage is that they are able to do some things on their own, don't have to wait for developers and request for the developers' time, but they can do something individually, independently, faster. They bear more responsibility, but they are more independent, and there are always two options. They can go further into UX or realize that no-code is cool and go this way. So the diversity is great because there is less possibility that at some point you just stuck somewhere at one point in one branch of operation, for example only product design or UX design. Let's say it's only mock-ups and you work only on things that are less detailed visually. It's also a matter of individual use, whether you want to use it or not. It's good to develop, I think. If you have the time, the will, and just swallow the bug, you just use it. And